All right. Hello, everybody. It's Stephanie over at Flyleaf, and I am with Kim and Kimberly and Allie, also over at Flyleaf, and we are here
Ah,
for another week, everybody.
nice.
How are we
It's good to
holding
see
up?
you guys again.
Yeah, it is. It is. And Kimberly's here this time.
I'm
It's so
here now.
Yay, it's so exciting to see you.
I think we need to have like a Brady Bunch moment where we're all like looking left and right and up and down.
Okay, should we do it now?
Hi, Stephanie. How you doing?
Hey, Allie, what's going on? Hey, Kimberly, how are you? I'm not looking in the right way, but
We'll find out.
Totally geeked out. Totally geeked out. So I thought today we talk about boundaries. Is that what we wanted to talk about? I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
that sounds good. I think we should talk. I think that's going to be something that we're going to need to figure out at some point through all this anyway, but in general, we're not taught how to do it, so we talk about it a lot therapeutically.
Right. So when clients come to you guys and say, help me understand what a boundary is, I've never had one, I've never heard of one, how do I create one? How do you define it first?
Well, I use your favorite word, Stephanie, of safety.
Yeah. It's our favorite word.
It's how do you establish safety in any situation or with any partner. And even in this time, we all need safety, mental health, emotional safety, physical safety.
Absolutely.
Spiritual,
Spiritual.
Financial.
sexual.
Cognitive.
Medical, while we're all in our houses. Those are boundaries.
Yeah.
I always describe it as a line in the sand that either I'm the one who's solely responsible for extending my boundary, meaning I don't feel safe with you, so I need to put more distance between us, or I feel close to you, you're trustworthy, and so I retract my boundary and bring you closer to me. But I'm the one that's solely in charge of moving and enforcing my boundaries.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. If we wait for somebody else to enforce our boundaries for us, we're going to be waiting a long time.
Right.
Yep. I say it's not meant to control or punish. It's meant to create safety.
Right.
Or maintain safety.
I think it also creates this place where we're advocating for ourselves, and we often don't do that in relationships. And it also provides an opportunity for somebody else to provide us with respect.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think too, it also gives somebody the opportunity to either say, we give them an opportunity to build trust. This is what I need from you to be safe. And then they can choose whether or not they want to do it. And if they don't, then that's something that we can note and go, okay, well, you're not going to give me what I need. Then that's something I need to know about this relationship.
Right. Right. And so respecting boundaries is one of the smallest little trust nuggets that we can begin to collect with people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the hardest things for most people to do is to say what their boundaries are, because people are afraid. And then we do the other thing where we'll even ask them, so did you tell so-and-so that this was okay with you or not okay with you? And they go, well, I think he knows. Well, no, you have to be pretty outright and specific when you're talking about things like that, just to be sure that your communication is heard.
Right. I think the second part is, how do you enforce your boundaries, right? So how do you define them? What constitutes a boundary? And then how do you enforce them?
Yeah. And if I think if they're worded or they're, I guess, thought out appropriately, what you'll find is that you're in charge of enforcing your own boundaries. So if I say, not showing up for a date or being late for a date's not okay with me, I'm not going to go out with you if you don't show up. I'm not saying to somebody, you have to show up in time. I'm just saying, if you choose not to show up on time, I'm just not going to go. And that's something I can enforce for myself.
It's how you're choosing to respond with the fact that your boundary was broken.
Right.
Some literature calls that a consequence, but some people hear the word consequence as something that's punitive and punishing. And
right.
It can be a word that just sets people off when they're on the receiving end of hearing what a boundary might be.
Yeah.
The same thing can be said that some people explain boundaries as rules, or like restrictions, like you're restricting me or you are placing limitations on me, and it has nothing to do with that other person. It's simply about what I need in order to feel safe and seen in this relationship.
I think some people view it, just as you're saying, Stephanie, even as a barrier to a relationship.
Yep.
Whereas what it's really doing is creating an opportunity for an even closer connection by showing that respect, building those trust nuggets, and creating vulnerability to say, this is what I need, and the safety that's present within that. So boundaries are definitely not barriers or consequences. And I think that's a huge aspect of where therapy communicates that and creates a safe opportunity to also share our boundaries. I think that's a beautiful thing that therapy provides.
Yeah. And I think when you're talking about consequences, that word just has this negative connotation, like Ali said. And the reality of it is a consequence is just the result of your action, right? So you can have a reward too. A consequence doesn't have to be negative. It can be very, like you keep saying, very trust building and relationship enhancing and safety building, because that's really what boundaries are about.
Mm-hmm.
So I also find, I don't know if you guys see this, I see this in myself too, though. There are areas of my life where I have really good, healthy boundaries, and then areas in my life where I have really a lot of difficulty setting and maintaining them for whatever reason. What are your thoughts around that?
I agree. I totally agree. I find myself having less firm boundaries when it comes to work, as far as if I, like cutting off after a certain period of time, right? Like, and having this be really delineated family time, or really like on the weekend, or not making a phone call back, or returning an email, or checking my email. I find myself much more porous around those boundaries than I am in my personal life. Or I guess that would be my personal life. I mean, see, look, I'm already blending them.
I guess.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, I'm the total opposite. I'm great with professional boundaries. And in my personal life, I tend to give people more than I probably should.
I think we all got tested with boundaries when we all formed Flyleaf. I think it was a beautiful thing that happened for all of us, that we had to learn how to become kind of this business aspect as therapists, and how to mold those two together and hold to boundaries. And I think our clients that transitioned with us kind of watched us develop such boundaries, which was really a healthy thing for them to actually see us model that. And modeling boundaries is such an important thing for children to see in relationships.
Right.
Not calling our clients children. Just kind of
some of them are. Like, literally.
Because nobody taught people. I mean, there's not a sitting down and having a boundaries session with your parents a lot of the time, right? I mean, you just you figure it out on your own a lot of times, and sometimes sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and you're always able to adjust.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you didn't know you needed a boundary until you ended up in a scary situation, where my gut told me I shouldn't do this, but I did it anyway. Culturally, a lot of places, like, growing up in the deep South, gender wise, maybe women are taught more often than not, you should be smiley and polite, and even when maybe your boundary is to cross the street and not make eye contact, and you're kind of rubbing up against what I feel like I need to do for safety versus what is culturally expected, and that can be a weird place.
Yeah.
I just had a thought and it just flew away from my head.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was a good thought too. I was too busy listening to you, and my thought was like, oh, it went away. Oh yeah, I know what it was. So I think one of the things that I hear people struggle the most with is how to communicate their boundaries and how to make them known. And of course, sometimes you have to say, if you do this, then I'm going to do this, make your choice. But most times I think our boundaries are set by how we behave and what we innately accept in our lives.
Right.
And I always use the example of, like, don't you know somebody at work that nobody tells dirty jokes to, or nobody cusses in front of? And everybody can resonate with that one person that you know. And I always say, did they tell you not to do it, or do you just know not to do it? And that's because that person is living a healthy boundary by either walking away, or it doesn't mean you have to stand up and declare, I will not accept this in my life all the time. It's not always like that. It's just how you choose to live your life, and and just kind of noting and going, yeah, this person isn't somebody that I want to get close to, and then making a healthy choice around it. And so boundaries don't have to be this scary, hard thing that we state all the time and declare. Sometimes, but not always.
Right. The example that I always use is the close talker. When somebody's like a really close talker and you take that step back because it makes you uncomfortable, I mean, that's solely my responsibility, right? To activate my boundary.
Mhm.
It is.
I remember a long time ago, I watched this like Discovery Channel special where they had, I guess this part was about boundaries, but I think it was more about like gender roles and like what people do. And they had these kids, and they had one kid who was standing, and then the other kid got to pick how close they stopped when approaching. And some kids would like stop 6 feet away, and some kids would stop like nose to nose with this other kid. But that's like their boundary and personal space bubble visualized. So I get the close talker thing, but like, where do people learn what that is? You know, I wonder if the 6 feet apart kid sees that modeled, or the nose to nose kid has other things going on. I don't know.
Do you run into people who don't know what their boundaries are?
All the time.
Absolutely.
How do you help them figure it out?
How do I help them figure out what
How do
feels
you
safe
help
for
them
them?
figure out what their boundaries are?
Well, first off, I'm asking them, what is it that they're seeking, right? Where are you in relation to this other person or to this event? What is it that you're wanting the outcome to be?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What about you guys?
I love Vicky Tildwell Palmer's her 5-step boundary solution clarifier, because it pretty much follows what Stephanie said, where you have to like, you know, collect the data and figure out what is it that I'm trying to create. And it really is needs based, and it has this beautiful 5 steps into how to set a boundary, including the 5th step being, let's reevaluate this and see if it worked or not. But if people still can't articulate it that way, then I like to go into their body and say, like, when you recognize that you needed this and didn't have it, what did that feel like? And if you could imagine what it would be like to feel like you have that, what would that feel like? And then manifest it from that way.
Right.
Well, and I think that right now we're in a time where people may not have a particular boundary set in place for being at home with their family 24/7.
Right.
And I think that that's a huge part of what I'm seeing with clients today is I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I'm trapped in a house with the same people for, what are we going on? A month
6
and a half
weeks?
now?
Yeah.
And so helping them try to identify their needs, you know, exactly what Stephanie and Allie are saying, and to how to get some self-care, creating some boundaries around time for setting self-care up, boundaries around work. How do we manage work? How do we manage kids? Those are all things that today, right now, are really important for a lot of our clients and people that might be watching is, how do I create boundaries to stay safe and sane in this unknown time?
Yeah. And there's something else that I tell clients too is not everybody is going to be appreciative and welcoming of the boundaries that you are establishing. In fact, you might lose some friendships and some relationships or have more distance with people because they're not going to be okay with you advocating for yourself. But you advocating for yourself is what you're built for.
And I talk a lot about, instead of trying to figure out what you want, because so many people aren't sure what that is to think about what your non-negotiables are in your life. Like, these are the things I just cannot have in my life. And there are fewer of those sometimes than there are of the things that we're trying to brainstorm that we want. And if you don't want somebody, if you know what you don't want, then it seems a little easier to work backward from there to set some healthy boundaries. And I don't know, I think that seems to work sometimes a lot better too.
Sure. I don't think that there's any wrong way of helping somebody differentiate and authenticate themselves.
I agree with
Ooh, that is a great little plug. Differentiate and authenticate.
Ooh, that sounds like a t-shirt.
That sounds like a topic of a next video.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds like a new shirt for us.
I was thinking like a Schoolhouse Rocks thing, but okay.
Oh,
So we can make a song about it, right?
Yeah.
None of us are singing it though. I can tell you that right now. Nobody wants to hear us start singing.
Nah.
I have a worksheet that I got probably, I don't know, 20 years ago, I guess. And it was how to state boundaries. And it gives like word for word what to say. and saying it in your own way. And I think it's really helpful. It's so simple. It's when you do this, I feel like this, which means if you do this, I don't like it, whatever it is. And if you continue to do this, then this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
And then you give them, just say it like that. And then if the person continues to do it, if you opt to say, all right, I gave you your warning, I'm just reminding you, not giving you a second warning, if that's what you opt to do. And then the next time you feel kind of justified in saying, I clearly stated what I needed. You didn't give it to me. I gave you a warning to give me what I needed. You still didn't give it to me, so I'm done. And this is the thing I'm going to do. But the big thing is whatever that thing is that you're going to do, you better make sure you do it.
Right.
Because if you keep saying it over and over and over again and not doing whatever it is that you say you're going to do, they're just going to keep pushing, and they're not going to believe anything you say, and you're just right back where you started, probably even worse off, because now they know that you don't have the fortitude to hold your space.
Right.
So you're kind of
Which
talking
I think
about,
brings, go
sorry.
ahead, Allie.
No, you're good.
I just think that brings up another important factor of having belief in yourself and self-worth, that you could stand to that boundary, right? That you believe that you are worthy of holding that boundary.
Right.
I love what you're saying, but we also have to make sure that we believe in ourselves to uphold that. And that's,
I agree.
a lot of work can be done as well.
I agree. And if we believe we're worth this much, then only ask for this much. And as we start to get a little bit more, we can always move it and make it a little bit more. But it's like grounding a kid, right? I'm not going to ground a kid for a month because I'm grounding myself for a month. There's no way I'm doing that. Be realistic. And if you ground them for a day, I can handle that. So just be realistic and mean what you say what you mean kind of thing. So if it's that, if you do something, whatever, if you're yelling at me on the phone, I'm going to hang up the phone, and then you can call me back when you're done yelling. And if you call me back and I answer it and you're still yelling, I'm going to hang it up again, but I want to have the conversation. I can't do it with you yelling. So when you're done yelling, we'll talk. And that's a healthy boundary, but it's not a punitive, horrible, difficult boundary. It's just one that says I can't be yelled at, and I don't have to be.
Right.
So it can be things like that.
Right. And when you say a boundary like that, you're maintaining an interpersonal boundary. So that I don't want to be yelled at by you, but then also maintaining an intrapersonal boundary where I recognize my worth, and it's not healthy for myself to be yelled at, and that's not good for me.
Right.
So yeah, because we're talking a lot about interpersonal boundaries, like boundaries between people, but people need to have boundaries that they maintain for themselves when no one else is around, just to maintain their own health and wellness. And I think a lot of people right now are probably finding themselves alone, maybe a little bit more than before. So do we have boundaries around, what kind of foods we're eating, or how much and what kinds of media we're intaking, and boundaries around the news and how much we're watching of that, and are we taking care of our physical health?
I had a conversation with a client a while ago since this COVID thing happened. And one of the things that came up was the fact that since people are working from home and working through this whole tele thing, that companies and businesses are expecting them to work longer hours because they're accessible, and how difficult it is to set a boundary around that, because the expectation is, well, since you're right there, I should be able just to get a hold of you. And I think technology in general, if someone texts me and I don't pick it up right away, I'm sorry, I can't be there all the time. But people have this expectation that we're living in the exact same room all the time,
Right.
because we have access to each other. So I think sometimes we need to work hard around setting those kinds of boundaries.
Good point, Kim.
Well, which feeds into why sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I'll find myself struggling where I'll go into my work email, just to see on the weekend to make sure that there's nothing in there. And it's like, that's my family time. That's my time. That's my time to just unplug and rejuvenate, right?
Yeah.
So I know that I can definitely strengthen that up a little bit more. But we only have like 5 minutes left, and I wanted to see, before we ended, about what are some of the resources that you guys tell clients about, and family members and friends who are asking about boundaries.
I have my favorite book right here.
Oh.
This is my favorite too. Boundaries.
Yep.
This one.
Yep.
This is the in a relationship kind of boundaries. And then this one, where to draw the line.
Yep.
These are so amazing, because like you can just read a chapter. It'll have like a boundary around like a particular thing, not necessarily, you don't have to read the whole book. You can pick pieces out of it that fit you, and it's just so easy to consume and read. And these are my favorites.
Yeah. So Anne Catherine, right? I have that Where to Draw the Line book in my office also. That's a great one.
Yep.
Mhm.
Those are great.
I have another work of hers in my office. I forget what it's called, but I think it's more has to do with some eating disordered behavior.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
She's such a great author.
It's like a thin
And
book.
isn't there just a book in itself, Boundaries? Allie, I think it's in your office. Is it in your office, Allie?
Henry Cloud, right? Did they have a book? Henry Cloud, I think,
Is
has
it the
a book
red
called
one?
Boundaries. Yeah, red and white one, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that one's more spiritual, so it comes from a more of a Christian perspective.
Yeah.
And it has a workbook that goes with it. So if that's kind of where your space is, then that's a resource for that.
I still like Vicki Tilwell Palmer's 5-step boundary solution.
I was just gonna say that.
That's the one I'm thinking of. That's it.
Yeah, that's the one. It has like leaves on the cover and it's red.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's hers. I mean, I like it, and I also like the resource that she has in the back of the book of like the needs menu, because I think sometimes it's really difficult to articulate that I need peace or I need physical touch or whatever. It's like this maybe a felt sense of what I need, but I don't have the word to articulate it. And if you can't articulate it, how's the person gonna know?
Yeah.
Right.
Love that needs menu. I use that all the time.
And laminate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there we are.
All right. Hey, Kim, why don't you tell everybody how to find us?
Oh, I'm so good at this, right?
I bet.
So we are at flyleafcounseling.com. Our Facebook page is Flyleaf Counseling, and our new YouTube page is Flyleaf Counseling. So all of the videos that we've done and we've posted everywhere else can be found in one place there on YouTube. So be sure to follow us and like us.
Word.
Notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content on YouTube.
There you go.
Then there you go. Okay. Who
You're
knew?
getting so good at plugging.
We're getting pretty good at this. All right,
right,
thank you guys.
sisters.
It's so good to see you. I miss you so much. I can't wait to get back in the office.
Me too. I miss you and love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.